Welcome to Psych Talk. I'm your host, Dr. Jessica Rabin, a licensed clinical psychologist. If you are a mental health professional, student in the social science field, or just interested in psychology and mental health, this podcast is for you. Although topics discussed on this podcast are similar to therapy, Psych Talk is not a replacement for therapy and is for educational and entertainment purposes only. So let's dive into today's episode. Hey everyone, welcome back to Psych Talk, and thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. Today I have a very special guest with me, Kendall Concini-Moore, who is a mom, a mental health advocate, and an author. So Kendall, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So I just gave a little tiny smidge of your introduction, but can you introduce yourself, a little bit about your background, what you do, and anything else you would like to share?
Yeah, I love my adjectives. I I do. I have always struggled with mental health. I hadn't been brave enough to kind of add the advocate part. And for the longest time, it kind of stopped me from, I didn't want to be a mother. I married my husband, telling him like I don't really see kids in our future. He was okay with that. And just on our journey of our life and everything we were doing and how supportive he was and therapy and everything, and kind of said, let's go for it. And so I got to add the mother adjective. And then in that, it developed into a how do I talk to my kids at the young age about mental health, and a story at bedtime developed and turned that into a book. And everyone's like, oh, have you always wanted to write? And I was like, I feel bad saying like no, I just did it. Because I know
I
like
love that though.
I've met authors. I'm like, you've had these stories in your head for years. And I just felt like this one was stuck with me like so intensely. I had to get it out and kind of put it all together. And I'm still like in disbelief reading it.
hmm Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I kind of love that authorship just happened. Kind of. I mean, I know it didn't just happen. I know it was a lot of work, like to actually put a book together, but that it kind of fell in place based off your own lived experiences and what you were already doing.
And people ask me like, we launched, I think last week, the hardcover. And so everyone's asking me like, how does it feel? How does it feel? And I was like, I do know the book's there and I'm still really excited. I had seen it in color way before everyone else. So like I've read it a million times to my kids. We read it while we were writing it. I'm like, it's already existed for me. What I'm excited about is things like this. Like, I'm getting to meet people out in the world that I never would have met to talk about mental health. And I'm getting to go to really great like therapy centers and schools and talk about mental health. And like, oh yeah, the book's there, but it's become something so much bigger for me that I'm just like living in that.
Yeah, that is wonderful because it's more than just a book, is what I'm hearing. It's brought opportunities and connection, and all of those things are really important and powerful. So you shared when you were introducing yourself that you have always struggled with mental health, and as much as you are comfortable with, I was wondering if you'd be willing to share a little bit about your own journey with mental health, as that's really going to be the foundation of a lot of what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I grew up in a very small area and just small population and just a very, I don't want to say like Stepfordy, but everyone did the same thing. There was the way you
Okay.
did stuff. And then like I was a larger child. I read a lot of books. My mom we had chickens and a pet pig and
Oh
like a
my gosh.
really great piece of property. So we had forest on our area and a lot of it was like kids lived in the little like development and cliques.
Hmm.
And so growing up, it was just everything about me that was what I felt was like unique because I loved reading and you escape and you're like a really creative character. I was bullied a lot for. And so in the mental health realm, it was just, I didn't see it as I'm a unique, cool, like leading character. I saw it as like, why don't I fit in?
Hmm.
And so early, it was just a lot of depression and people pleasing. So it wasn't friends. It was like, what can I offer? So you hang out with me, or, in a small town, it's a lot of everyone gets invited because mom, like that's what parents say
Mm-hmm.
at like school events. And I always knew that it just felt really like sad, but mental health wasn't really talked about. It was, my parents, if you want to talk about like having struggles in school, they're like, well, what do you have to be sad about? Because we know at
Mm-hmm.
home we're doing great stuff together and we know we're going on vacations and adventures. And so they don't see the little things.
Mm-hmm.
And so just did not really come into my like I guess like self-love identity until like college, when you're finally out there and you escape all
Yeah.
of it and you get to say like there's different people and there's different mindsets and you can go through that. But by then my foundation was already depression
Yeah.
and just constant self-doubt. And therapy at the time had diagnosed as generalized anxiety.
Okay.
Now, more recently, it was re-diagnosed as ADHD with like a hyper focus, which I loved. I love being diagnosed because once you get it, you can find the resources that click. Because
Yeah,
with
absolutely.
anxiety, a lot of it was like medication. And I was like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't do medication. I have autoimmune, so I have every side effect. So when I got ADHD and you read beyond what the steps were for anxiety, it was like all of this clicks. And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of it was just transforming, I guess, into being open to talking about it and saying, hey, I need supports, I need
Mm-hmm.
resources, and I need to admit that this is what I'm going through daily with it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And, I want to highlight what you said about, getting a diagnosis. And, for many people, getting a diagnosis can be really scary. For
Mhm.
other people, they find relief in it or find validation because they're like, wow, this makes sense. And exactly what you said, regardless of what the diagnosis is, for a lot of people, it does open up opportunities to find treatments or interventions that work for them. Because
Mhm.
if so many people get misdiagnosed for a variety of reasons, but if you're diagnosed with A and you actually have B and you're just seeking out treatments for A and it's not working because you actually have B, um, it can make you feel like what's wrong with me or reinforce a lot of that negative self-talk, self-doubt, things that you were listing that you have experienced as well. So I'm so glad for you that getting a diagnosis that fits has allowed you to have access to things that actually help you.
Yeah, I get that. On the mental side, it's working out. On the
Yeah.
physical side, I do. I have autoimmune and it's been like a year and we're still guessing and checking the diagnosis. And that's part of the problem. Like I go to the doctors and I tell my husband, like, please let there be something wrong with me. Like I just want something on the chart to kind of have the yellow exclamation point and it hasn't. And I was like, so we can't figure out. And then yes, we tweak so many meds to figure it out. And that's why I think maybe for me, I was a lot happier in the mental side to be like, all right, let's solve one thing
Hmm.
and kind of be able to find resources there.
Yeah. And I mean, and you know this, but your experience in, from the physical health standpoint is unfortunately not uncommon that
Yeah.
people spend years upon years going to specialists and different doctors and doing different tests to try to find answers to things. But I'm glad at least on the mental side you're getting some answers.
Yeah, and on that, that's sort of where the whole journey of the book came from because I didn't know I had my first child and I had expected postpartum to happen. I was like, I'm already predisposed to depression. It was as hard as we expected it. We had a horrific miscarriage before. And when we got pregnant again, I felt like it was even worse because then people will tell you a lot, like kind of the silver lining, like, hey, but you're
Hmm.
pregnant. And I'm like, I can still be struggling and be happy that we're
Absolutely.
re pregnant. And so I wasn't able to really fully embrace all of like the postpartum depression because it was a successful pregnancy. So a lot of it was like, why is this stressful? You got the baby. And I'm like, because this is so hard.
Yeah.
And I knew of those, like the memory of sitting in front of the couch and having my daughter on the boppy just behind me and like my husband coming home. And I'm just like, no, like I need to tag out. Like I
Hmm.
can't turn around because I was just like sobbing. And when we got pregnant with our second, I knew I didn't want an only child. So I told my husband, like, we have to go right away because if it mentally starts getting easier, I won't be able to put myself back in that
Hmm.
situation. And so when I was pregnant, and I do not like being pregnant, so I knew it was
I
going to
didn't
be,
either.
yeah, I did not glow. And I said, our daughter was 2 at the time, but her language took off. So I was like, I don't know how to explain to her these like heavier, like mom's just crying randomly
Hmm.
concepts. And there wasn't an easy way to show her like physically what was going on when I just couldn't focus. And so we started with the cloud analogy to say a
Hmm.
cloud has come over mom and we had a cloud pillow and it'd be like it's the cloud, it's not anything. And so it had to be this tangible way that she can see that my mental health wasn't there, and she doesn't know all the deep words of depression. She'll know mental health awareness because we say it a lot, but she's able to just say a cloud happened to mom, and so it's a tangible thing. And we
Hmm.
sort of do it with the autoimmune too, because I was like, mom doesn't have a band-aid on, but mom is in pain and we need to kind of talk this through. And so that was really my goal of like, how do you show something that people deal with but can't understand?
I love that so much. And so to bring up your book, the book we're referring to is entitled Mom's Cloud and the Beach Adventure. And you just shared a little bit of what inspired you to write it. Is there anything else you want to share about the book, whether that be the journey to writing it, a little bit about the story, before we dive into more conversations of just like talking with kids about mental illness?
Yeah, I know. I've been reading it in a lot of different venues, and it is really great because when I read today at a little school, and I kind of got that the ages change from classroom to classroom. And so I was like, for this class, it's just a beach adventure. And we just talk about how sometimes the beach is hard for mom and dad. We all know that.
Yeah.
And in the other classroom, we talked more about the feelings aspect of the clouds changing. And so it was using this kind of tangible means to also, as I read, pause and tell kids what is happening. Because
Mhm.
in the book, my message I'm trying to convey is that my family has learned I have clouds and that it's just completely okay. They don't ask me, like, do we need to go home? They don't
Mhm.
say, what can we do to cheer you up? They kind of just know, and they'll invite me to take part in stuff. But when I say I can't, there's no like, oh, mom, please. It
Mhm.
is this way of me telling them, you don't have to fix it. Like, thank you for inviting me. I still need a minute. And then they sort of change what they're going to do. So in real life, my kids know I don't love going in the water. So if I'm having a hard time, they come and play near me. So
Mhm.
that is what was easy to write for the book was, hey, I have a cloud. Okay, mom, let's just sit and make a snowman next to you.
Mhm.
And so it's that shifting kind of, what are we going to do? And as I've been reading out loud, it's pausing and showing the kids like we do interactive activities. So
I
I'm
love
like,
that.
the kids raise their hands to wish the cloud, and mom puts it down. So I have the class like raise their hand. I say, okay, you don't have to do it. Let's see what mom does in the book. And so I'm trying to use it as, the story is there, but also as a mom who rereads the same books over and over and over again, I'm like, I want people to like paraphrase it. I want them to kind of
Mhm.
look at the page and kind of shift and change what's going on to have conversations.
I love that so much. And I mean, I know you shared where this came from, of teaching your daughter at age 2, giving her something tangible. But the cloud analogy like makes a lot of sense because we I don't want to say we all, like at some point in their young age, kids get a concept of what a cloud is and a rain cloud and, what that means. Rain clouds are usually dark. It means rain's coming, but they also pass. And I love that you shared that depending on the age of your audience or to anyone listening, depending on the age of your kids, it's can start different conversations all around mental health but developmentally appropriate
Mhm.
conversations that they can understand.
Mm. And my daughter, it's been a whole family experience. When I was writing it, it would be I would write 2 or 3 lines per character, and I would ask my daughter and husband. My son just started talking, so I would ask them, what would you say? And she had come up with some things that she would say in there. And then that is why, when I was trying to go traditional publish, the stuff that they wanted to change, I was like, at this point, I can't. Like, this has been
Yeah.
our family. And so we were able to keep some of them in there. And so when people we know are reading it and she's there, she'll be like, this is what I said. And I'm like, yeah.
Oh, that's great that it's like truly a family affair. Is that, I don't even know
Yeah.
what the right word is, but like it wasn't just you writing it, like your whole family was involved in the process.
Mhm.
And I mean, really was your daughter, it sounds like, was partially the inspiration, like obviously your own experiences, but
Mhm.
having to navigate those conversations with a young child was the inspiration for you to make this book. And now other people can navigate these conversations with their own kids.
Yeah, we let her sign it. So her name, it was cute. The illustrator had her write it on paper and then we scanned it in and she like laid it. So it says on the front like Kendall and Juliana, the illustrator, and then there's a little like arrow where she drew an Alma too. And
Oh,
so she negotiated. We have like thousands of books here at our house because we ship from our website. And she said she would sign them all, but every 10 books she gets a cookie. And so it's been fun. She does like we just got new cookies too, and she's like, they're big cookies. I'll do 20. And it was like deal.
I love it. I
Yes.
love what
And
kids come up with.
yeah. And then she's also learning to draw. So I had done a post where I was like, some people are gonna get pictures where like we paid her in a cookie and then she decided to add on 10 more and we should have stopped at the cookie.
Cookie.
Like, yeah, but it's
Uh,
been fun.
I love that. I love that. So, to I guess obviously we've been talking about your lived experience and to kick off the conversation more just like broadly about parenting and having these conversations with kids. Can you talk a little bit about like parenting with mental illness? So challenges that come with it, shame, stigma, anything that you want to share either from your personal journey or from stories you've heard from other individuals that you've connected with through this.
Yeah. I when we decided to have kids and they're there and something is hard, I immediately get this feeling because if I can't handle that it's hard because I'm dealing with something else or a cloud's there,
Hmm.
then I want it to be like, I shouldn't have done this. Like, why did I think I can do this? And so in that first year, like our daughter came and she had both of my kids came wildly early. So they had their own medical issues. And so then it was, I did something wrong, like, because you had to
Yeah.
grow them. So it's like, I grew them wrong. And you have to go through that, like, I shouldn't have done this. And then when they're crying and you start crying, it's like, I'm not ready for this. And a lot of it, like, was my husband going, like, it's, it's only this part. Like, it's not all of you. Like, you
Hmm.
can't handle this part and you shouldn't have to handle this part. Nobody's used to like a screaming baby nonstop. And
Hmm.
it was just trying to take away like all of me out of every little instance that was a struggle and then the guilt that comes with that and then having to tell people it was hard and going well like no like I was supposed to be strong enough to have kids like we made this decision we have a support team and then you compare yourself so like we
Hmm.
are lucky we have grandparents who will come babysit so when life's hard and we can get away and we know friends who can't you just feel like that guilt
Yeah.
and it would build and trying to not show that to the kids was like this break of, if I'm gonna have a cloudy day and I need to like go have a shower cry, I don't want to keep having to leave the room in front of them, or
Mhm.
I don't want to have to fake it through an activity because kids will pick up on that. So
Oh,
it's like,
absolutely.
we just need to talk about this. And when we started talking about it, it kind of gave me that permission to like finally see like I don't have to be perfect, I can be present.
Mhm.
And when I would tell her hold a cloud, she would know like, okay, mom doesn't want to play horsey. It doesn't mean it like mom doesn't want to hang out with me in this
Mhm.
room. And so it was like unlocking a little bit of that like heaviness on my shoulders
Mhm.
to just say, I need to tell you this is hard for me and you can get it. And I'm not going to leave the room. I'm just going to sit here on the couch and watch you guys. And then she would play. And it was kind of saying, like, okay, like I didn't just ignore her and leave the room and break down or anything. And a lot of it is just that is what I know a lot of parents are dealing with. Like you
Mhm.
think you have to be on 24/7 and you think you have to be like the best version of yourself all the time. And with mental health, I had to like come out of the gate going, no, that's not me. Like I'm not going to learn patience. I am not going to suddenly graduate therapy with like emotional regulation gold star. Like I don't
Mhm.
think I'm capable of gentle parenting unless like I have my husband there to like kind of help me breathe through it.
Mhm.
And so it was just a lot of coming about it, being honest about that.
Mhm.
And most people aren't.
Yeah,
Until I feel like until I started saying it, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, me too." And I'm like, I wish we all talked about this before.
absolutely. Well, and parenting is hard. Period. Like, and I know there's people out there that are like, "No, it's easy." I don't understand people that say it's hard. Like, for most people, it is a challenge. And then you add your own struggles on top of it. And, you described earlier on all of this starting as depression. Um, well, we know people who are depressed typically are more self-critical. They have more negative thinking styles. Energy is lower. Motivation is lower, loss of interest and pleasure, like all of these things that are compounding on just the day-to-day stress of parenting, the responsibility of raising tiny humans, not just feeding them, bathing them, making sure they're alive, but like making sure that they grow up to be kind humans. Like that within itself is a lot. And then, you add your own struggles, and so many parents already don't take time for self-care. And we know if you're struggling with a mental health concern, a lot of times you don't engage in self-care. So now you have two forces basically compounding together, and you're really not taking care of yourself. And what happens when we don't take care of ourselves? We can't show up for our kids. And it's this cycle, basically. Like we're telling ourselves we're not good enough. We're comparing each other. We're doing these things because we feel depressed. Our depression tells us you're not good enough. Why did you think you can do this? Then you make more mistakes or you're hypercritical of yourself, which makes you more frustrated. And then it keeps going on and
Yeah.
on and on.
And that was the first year. So the first year with my daughter, it when it was just me and her, there were a lot of those moments where I would like go to my husband and be like, "Am I a bad mom?" And
Mhm.
like you're just crying. And or I would say it. I was like, "I'm a bad mom." And he would always tell me like, no, because if you're this concerned, then
Mhm.
that means you care. And I really had to like sit with that a lot. And so when our second one came, it did shift a lot. It became almost like a joke where I would like self-talk to myself, where he'd go, "What's wrong?" And I was like, well, I was gonna ask you if I'm a bad mom, but you're just gonna tell me to be quiet. So like, fine, I'm a good mom because I care. And I would just like answer this whole script and like walk around mumbling it. And if I felt like I was a bad mom, then he would look at me and I'd be like, "I get it. I'm a good mom." And he would be like, "I guess you had a bunch of questions in your head." And I was like, "Yeah." So like that was part of it, was trying to really get through that. And we live on social media, so there's the
Mm-hmm.
world of FOMO. And like at one point, I was a stay-at-home mom with my second. And so I was trying to like make mom friends and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you would see people having different, it's not that I didn't have like the energy to do the activities and things that
Mm-hmm.
they were doing. I was just different at it. So like our adventures were like all outside in the park, and the kids would come with us to volleyball, and we would like go drive to faraway beaches and stuff. So when I would look at like a mom who has like a bunch of bins organized with like educational activities and pull them all out, I'd get this like, I need to do more.
Mm-hmm.
And then knowing that I have like mental health stuff, like there were days where for the most part my depression is like high functioning. So
Mm-hmm.
I go out, I overdo, everything's planned. But there are days where I'm just like, the idea of putting the kids in the car is like, I'm can't possibly, and I like don't leave the house because I was just like, I can have fun in the house. If I go out into a different environment, I don't know if it's going to stress me out. I don't know if it's going to like a cloud's going to come and I'm going to make the
Mm-hmm.
kids want to leave. And so it was those days where I knew I had made the decisions for me and the kids. I'm like, let's have a lot of fun at home. Let's do a tea party and a picnic. But then that kind of self-doubt creeps in. It's like, well, why didn't you take them here? And why don't you do
Mm-hmm.
this? And like that was really hard to break
Yeah.
and finally come to terms with, and just be like, they love what we're doing together. That's why we pick it. And it's not like they're coming and begging me and saying, Mom, I want to go here and here and here. So like we're having fun in what we're doing. And so I had to stop questioning that idea of like good mom and be like,
Mm-hmm.
I am mom. Like
Yeah.
I am doing the best mom because I am their mom, and
Mm-hmm.
and take away all of those like other adjectives.
Yeah. No, I love that, because going back to social media, yes, even if we know, oh, it's a highlight reel or whatever we tell ourselves, all of us still find ourselves comparing to people we see, strangers that we don't know. And like, yes, they posted a 30-second video of their organized bins of educational crafts, but we don't know what's actually in those bins, how long it took them to get there. But when we don't know all that information, especially I'm thinking like anxiety right now, but whatever it is, or even if you don't have a diagnosable mental health condition, our brain wants to fill in the gaps. So we
Mhm.
assume that this mom with the bins of the educational activities has the most structured day where her kids sit at the kitchen table and they're doing activities from 8:30 a.m. till 10 a.m. and then they're doing this. But we don't actually know that. But when we feel bad about ourselves or when we struggle with anxiety, because anxiety uh, thrives off in uncertainty, meaning that anxiety rises um, and comes up with all these scenarios, we are going to project our self doubt, our self criticism onto other people in the sense of like, well, they're doing all this. Why am I not good enough? So I love the fact that you kind of over time changed your
Mhm.
language or also realize like just because this Pinterest mom is doing this doesn't mean what I am doing is any less than.
I think I also, where the book came from was a bedtime story. And so
Mm-hmm.
we, every night when we go to bed, I would always say, like, what was the best part of your day? And it was a fun, like, for me, it helped in the mental health because, as you say, like, I write the narrative different. So if we had a fantastic day where we went to the park and everything was great and adventurous, but I was at the park and I didn't feel like swinging, and I tell them, like, no. And they were like, oh man, I'm gonna tell myself that like, oh, I didn't swing with them all day. And
Yeah.
I don't always see all the other, it's like when the toast falls jam side down. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't really happen more. It's just that is traumatic. So you
Mm-hmm.
remember having to deal with that. And so I had started doing that as like a bonding exercise because I knew what I thought the worst part of the day was. And so when I would ask her, what's the best part of your day? I needed to hear what stuck with you through everything. And then I also was open as she got like 3 and 4, and now we're in like the teenagers. It was, I would ask her, like, what was the worst part of your day? And, to a point, like my husband and I, we were working from home and stuff. And so it was learning from her, like, well, you guys were on your computers a lot today. And I was like, okay, tomorrow we're
Yeah.
going to try and break that. And I was trying to find like the little stuff we can change. And if she said, like, well, you were like moody all day, then we would talk about, I was like, well, mom had a cloud today and it wasn't your fault. And I'm really sorry I'm moody. And that is something my family never did. We don't
Yeah.
apologize in mental health. It's just, I'm your parent. I have something going on. So it was also taking that moment to kind of check in with my child and say, what did you enjoy? And what can mom maybe even do different? And then I
Hmm.
would talk about it with her, like, well, I would have liked if you picked up your room the first time I asked,
Hmm.
then I wouldn't have had to come in all grumpy, throwing the laundry away. And so that has been really where it's helped me to
Hmm.
just try and hear what I'm not hearing in my
Yeah.
head.
No, I love that so much. And honestly, I think regardless of if someone's listening struggles with depression or another mental health disorder, that is such a good tool to use and skill to have, especially when you're parenting, because as parents, we all make mistakes. And I do the same thing. I'll be like, oh my gosh, this morning I raised my voice because I was stressed because we're running late yet again. And I'll be thinking about it all day. I'm like, oh my gosh, what if my daughter hates me because I raised my voice or I shouldn't have done that? Like, it all would have worked out, things like that. But, intentionally asking your kids, what was your best part of the day? What was the worst part? Are there anything, asking for feedback that mommy, daddy, whatever the guardian is raising them can do better, and taking that feedback, because a lot of times kids will notice things that we didn't even think about. Like, you were thinking about the swing all
Mm.
day, and they might say, there were so many best parts. I love going to the park, and then I loved when we, I don't know, got ice cream after, and I loved when we did this and this and this, and not even remember that you said no to swinging. But our narrative, especially if we have mental health concerns, will hyper focus on the things we did, quote unquote, wrong.
Yeah. And I have, I've been doing like, those moments where they're just doing something and you snap in the
Yep.
moment. And I was like, there are definitely some where I've like I'll yell her name and I'll be like, Alma. And then I'll like see her like, oh no. And then I'll pause and have that ability to just go like, I love you. And I'm like, I know I started where I was probably gonna like lose it. So I have to like shift and change. And that has been something in like a lot of us talking mental health
Hmm.
where I've been able to kind of do we do the put up the candles and blow them out
Love
for
that.
deep breathing. And then you put the trick candle back up. And it's that like, okay, I'm not going to never yell at her. That's just not realistic.
Hmm.
She's still 4, but it's that catching myself in the moment and then kind of doing it. Or if I don't catch myself in the moment, like I'll yell at her in the kitchen and then later I'll go in the living room and I'll be like, Alma. And even if she thinks she's in trouble again, that's when I'll be like, I love you. And I'm really sorry I yelled before. But I'll do it in kind of that same tone so she can not be like overly scared every time you
Hmm.
have that attitude because it's like mom's going to come back and talk about it. And so that has been a lot of my I guess, I would like hope to say general parenting, but I do put so much weight on it being the mental health, like kind of cycling mindset is to just say, like, I know some of the I wish they didn't parenting side
Hmm.
happen, but I also have to like pause and celebrate my awareness that
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't say it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
I will say that it is going to happen, and I've learned how to react after it happens
Yeah.
differently.
Absolutely. So you obviously have talked a lot about already, like just talking to particularly your daughter about mental health. And so why do you think it is so important to talk to kids about mental health, whether that be as a parent who struggles with their own mental health or generally, why should we be talking to kids about mental health?
So it's interesting. I was when I read the book to kids, I start off with saying like we're going to read about feelings. And at the end of the book, we have my family's picture and I say like our family talks about feelings. Mom's is her cloud. Alma did identify hers is tornado. So she knows
Mhm.
she can't hit, she knows she can't throw stuff. But if she's really overwhelmed, she says, "Can I go in my room and be a tornado?" And I said, "Yes. I won't yell at you for yelling." Max likes to be a rock, so he will just kind of get down and stay. And a little kid had asked me, and they said, well, what does dad do when he is upset? And I sat there and I was like thinking about it, and I was like, I don't know. Because like dad's the rock literally of the
Yeah.
family. And when I think about that, I was like, that was why it was important for me to tell my husband, like, we need to start talking about this because there is a visual difference in the way you carry yourself and
Hmm.
that I am not able to do. And when my daughter was born, she had a very traumatic like tongue tie botch and she got traumatized by the idea of me feeding her. So we
Ugh.
had a bad doctor. They cut the tongue tie. They tried to have her nursing me. So she would not get up on my chest. She didn't want to cuddle. And my husband did a lot of it. And so I didn't bond with her for the first like 6 months. And I was like,
Uh,
because it's all dad. Dad is food, dad is calm. And when it started to be that she was recognizing language and emotions and like the visual shifts and stuff, I said, I can't go through it again where she goes to dad only
hmm.
because something mom is doing traumatizes her. So if
Hmm.
mom is crying for no reason, I don't want her to get kind of like, oh no, what's wrong with mom? I'm going to go to happy dad.
Yeah.
And my husband knows how to sit with me in those moments. So I didn't want it to be like also like parentifying. Like I didn't want it to
Hmm.
be like my family, like, oh, mom's sad, let's all go cheer up and be responsible for me. So I
Yeah.
was like, we have to talk to her about why it's different for mom than it is for dad. And that was what was easy about the beach story because mom doesn't love the water, dad does.
Yeah.
So it was like, just like we're at the beach and dad goes in the water and mom doesn't. When we're home, mom gets sad sometimes and dad doesn't. And
Hmm.
that was the conversation, like why we needed it because they were going to pick up on it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think what you just said there is hitting the nail on the head because kids are so observant. Kids pick up on more things than we give them credit for. And if we're not openly talking about it, it doesn't mean they don't know something's going on or they don't know it exists. They just don't have the language for it. I can
Mhm.
think of so many instances, especially like just professionally working with kids where, you know, a family is like, "Can you be here to disclose whatever it is to the kid?" And they're like, "Yeah, I know. I've been waiting for you all to say it." Or like, "I figured it out because of this." Um, and so I think exactly like you said, kids are going to notice differences in their parents or grandparents or the way people around them act and respond. And, with you sharing part of your story and, wanting to prevent your daughter from only going to dad for things like, yeah, it's absolutely important to have these discussions so that kids better understand and don't just label you as mom as, oh, well, she's the sad one, so I'm going to go play with fun dad. Or mommy never wants to do X, Y, and Z, or daddy always has fun, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Because that's also going to probably reinforce a lot of your mental health symptoms if you feel like, oh, my daughter always goes to dad. Um, yeah, I feel like I just rambled for a little bit.
No, and like you said, like guilt of her finding out later. Like I don't know what the world thinks like the appropriate age is. Like is it 16 and you're like, "Hey, happy birthday, mom has depression." And so like I didn't know, what do people think that appropriate age is? People ask me like what age is the book for? And I'm like, honestly, it's for when you're ready
Mm-hmm.
because it's for the parent to be emotionally ready to talk about this. Because if I had waited now, if I had waited to talk to my daughter about everything going on, I didn't want it to be like I was always in a different room and coming
Mm-hmm.
back. And then she finds out. And then I felt like the response would be like, Mom, why didn't you let me be there for you? And
Mm-hmm.
then you lose that bond of
Yeah.
them being there for you, but in their choice way. So, like, I was parentified. I didn't have the choice. I was responsible for my mother because my dad horribly didn't support mental health. And it was, I knew like I need it to be there and I want it to be. So I was like, I don't want my daughter to have to find that out
Mm-hmm.
later and not have been able to have that choice to be there. Like she's 4. She can like understand I'm having a bad day and I can be like, go
Mm-hmm.
outside and play. And she can be like, fine, bye. And some days she'll be like, no, let's sit and watch a movie together. And I'm like, as long as it's like, I'll be okay because I told
Mm-hmm.
you I'm going to be okay and now go be yourself and
Yeah.
I didn't want to hold on to that in like a resentment kind of way.
Absolutely. And so you also mentioned, obviously, your cloud, your daughter is the tornado, your son's a rock. And I think that is such a great visual on how we can talk about mental health with kids. Do you have any other like tips or insights on how we can talk to kids about mental health in a way they understand in a developmentally appropriate manner? Because you clearly read your book and have different conversations across the age range of children.
Yeah, I'm just such a like analogy person. I think
Yeah.
like it, the first, so I am writing 3 books, and the first one was so easy because the beach was our experience.
Okay.
And the second one, we're going to a park, and I'm kind of shifting the cloud to represent depression a little different. So I'm still like learning and doing stuff to really hone that in. But I think that is what my tip is like, where is your space where you feel everyone is different, whether it's like even
Hmm.
rooms in your house, like, hey, you know how your room looks like this and my room looks like this. And it's just finding that grounder to say, where did they already recognize like obvious differences?
Hmm.
And then build on that and just kind of flow. I mean, I love weather analogies, but that's the point. Like it's
Yeah.
clouds because clouds can be outside when it's sunny, and clouds can be like creative unicorn looking puffs. And then
Hmm.
clouds can be storm clouds that ruin the entire day. And it's just about kind of exploring what your environment is and how
Hmm.
to kind of sit down and look at, hey, what happened here? And how can we share what everyone felt in that moment?
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. And, you know, analogies can be great for kids, especially if it's like a concrete thing, like a cloud. They know what a cloud is, they know what a rock is. Because even though, putting language like sad, angry, frustrated is great. And I do think children should have that language so they can express how they feel. That's very abstract.
Mm-hmm.
Um, not all kids, like, some kids may know like sad and happy, but when you're getting like depressed or irritated or more nuanced feelings, they're probably not going to really understand it. Or then you get hit with a million questions of what does that mean? And then you're trying to define, I don't know if you're in that stage with your daughter, but I get asked to define everything. And I have never realized how little words I actually know how to define. That's when you have a 4 or 5 year old. Um, but yeah, if I love the tip of like if you already notice or if there's areas that you already notice differences, that your kids already notice differences, use that to start the conversation.
Also, just like randomosity. Like, I think a big thing in our house was I wasn't, we have the why face. Why?
Mhm.
Why? And I was like, I don't know why. And I didn't
Yeah.
want it to be like, because I said so. And so a big part of it was like, I mean I'm not a science person. So there are reasons why clouds are in the sky, but why one day a cloud is like here and looks like a dragon and why it's over like a mile away it's here and it's raining. I'm like, I don't know, girl,
Yeah.
science. And so that was kind of like the same idea where, I was reading today and a kid goes, "Why did the cloud come?" And I was just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know why it comes, but let's talk about what happens when it's here. And I think that was
Mhm.
a really big part of it, is like, we're not here to have the conversation about the why sometimes. We're
Mhm.
just here to have talk about like the effect. And
Mhm.
and kids know that in the general concept. Your ice cream falls, you're sad. So I
Yeah.
said, okay, well, what if we just don't know why we're sad? Like, there was no ice
Mhm.
cream, we're just sad. And talk through that step. And I think that was really big for me too, because it was a somewhat like training experience. Like, my
Mhm.
husband, when we were dating, he had never like experienced mental health. He never had anything like negative happen in his life. There was like nobody died when he was alive, and he
Mhm.
never had like intense grief or trauma. And I was like, that's fantastic for you. But the problem for me is then that means you also don't know that coping next step. And so when you don't know how to personally work through all of feelings, it's not as easy to help someone else do that. And so he had, in the beginning, I would be like, I'm having I called it in the beginning a depression wave. And I'd be like, I'm having a
Mhm.
depression wave. And he would go, why? And I was like, I don't, like, if I could tell you why, I wouldn't have it. Like,
Yeah.
I would have figured it out before I got here. So a big part of it was shifting our language to say more of like, how can I support you? And
Mhm.
then we learned the tools, the really great like Brene Brown thing. Like, do you need like solution, or do you
Mhm.
need comfort? The sympathy, empathy. And I would start to tell him like, okay, I need a solution. Like, you need
Yeah.
to pull me out of this. And so that was how we wanted to talk about with the kids. Like, we don't always know why these things happen, but
Yeah.
we need to talk about how to do the next thing.
Yeah. I love that. I love not focusing on the why because sometimes there isn't a why, which is a very hard concept for toddlers and young kids to
Yes.
understand. But also, it's not just like, I don't know why and dismissive. It's, I don't know why. Let's talk about what we can do when this does come up.
I just like, my son is in his Y phase though, but it's
Oh, yeah.
so cute. So like, he is also into like getting stuff out of the cabinets himself. So
Hmm.
he's like, I want a cheese stick. And I was like, we don't have cheese sticks. And he'll go, why? I was like, well, you didn't go to the store.
Like,
Why? And I was like, well, you don't know how to drive. Why? Like, and we kind of go down it. So I was like, I do take it sometimes because he's just
yeah,
so
yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about like guilt. We've talked about um your experience, growing up and, oh, we don't talk about mental health. And I don't think we've explicitly used the words, but we've implied, parenting with mental illness comes with stigma, shame by you sharing, like when you finally started talking about it, like all your friends were like, oh, me too. And it's like, okay, why were none of us talking about it? So how can we lessen the stigma and shame that many parents feel about having a mental illness while also showing up as a parent?
it's like that active listening,
Mhm.
right? Like, when we were going through even like the miscarriage, and people think it's so like easy to be like, cheer up, like, oh, it was meant to be and stuff. And I'm like, just listen.
Yeah.
Just try and sit and listen, and don't add like any more to that sentence.
Mhm.
And for me, it was really hard. I knew, and I had even said this in my like launch, like, I knew I can easily text everyone who is there for me, like, hey, I'm going through this.
Mhm.
I don't always know that it is that check-in response back that's easy for me to take.
Mhm.
So I don't know how, if people are like, what do you need? And I'm like, they're just going to ask what I need and how to help. And I don't know how to answer it. So I might as well not even tell them. And so my goal has been telling people like, pause and ask that question. Do you need
Mhm.
support? Do you need comfort? Pause and ask them, what do you need me to do?
Yeah.
Don't just go with what, and it's hard because like, I am a problem solver. I ask it a lot because I tell people, if you don't tell me if you need a solution or a comfort, I'm going to try and do a, not a solution, but I'm going to try and share a relatable story so you
Mhm.
don't feel alone. And I'll tell them like, do you want a story back to feel heard, or do you want to just have it be you? And so it's just kind of being ready to accept critique too on the way they're presenting their love language if it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
work for the person. And that was really hard for my husband and I. Like, we had to go to therapy for it because I'm like, your love language is this, and it is not working for me. And can we just please talk about how to talk about that? Because when
Mm-hmm.
I say it doesn't work, you see it as like me like dissing you. And I'm like, I'm not. Like, I'm just saying it's not going to click. And so a big part of reducing the stigma is like allowing the person to just say it all
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of like keep waiting until you, and hey, is that it? Is it it? And then also just, yeah, like being ready for the answer. Sometimes people ask, like, are you okay? And I'm like, do you really want to know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and being like upfront about that. And we're maybe even phrasing it that way, like, hey, I'm checking in on you, and like you can say everything. Like,
Mm-hmm.
or say it all, say how bad it is, like get it all out and kind of be that resource, because we don't do it that way. I think it's a lot of
No.
pleasantries. Hey, how are you? Good, great. Yeah, like,
Yeah. Good. How are you? Fine,
yeah.
thanks. Yeah.
And like I say, okay, it's okay. I actually have it tattooed on me because I always say like it's okay. And I had like a reminder. I'm like, I can keep saying it's not okay. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's a learning curve to, the same with how to find your analogy. I think it's a learning curve to also say like, hey, how do you want me to check on you? Do you want me to just say, how are you doing? Or are you going to naturally say, I'm fine? Do you
Mm-hmm.
want me to say like, hey, how is this specific thing? And then same with my husband, like he would write me little post-its and he'd be like, I love you. And I was like, you need to write something better because I know you love me. I was like, you
Mm-hmm.
need to write like, I'm so proud that you put the dishes away when you couldn't even get out of bed the other day. Like I need like all of those
Mm-hmm.
tangible things. And so that's my advice for reducing stigma is like sometimes people are there and I know it, but my brain's gonna tell me it's a favor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like my husband will even, we'll have a party and everyone will leave and I'll be like, do you think they were okay? And he'll be like, you have to tell yourself, like, they wouldn't have drove here if they didn't want to come. Like, you
Yeah.
didn't, there was no like requirement. This isn't
You weren't
work.
forcing people.
Yeah. And so it's that kind of like, I can tell people that, but I also proactively would like people to check in and ask
Mm-hmm.
and be like, hey, like, just be proactive a little bit because when we have to say our sentences, our brain tells us like burden, our brain
Yeah.
tells us favors, our brain tells us like, oh, we need help again. And it's just like the more it comes from the other side to do that learning, the
Mm-hmm.
less it's like a stigma or a title, and we can like be like, oh, it's just conversation now.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that you highlighted active listening, actually checking in. And I mean, really, the overall theme that I was taking away is just having these conversations, like
Mhm.
whether that is people who are struggling with their mental health, actually talking about it, whether it's people who know someone's struggling, asking genuine questions and sitting with them so these conversations can be had. Because otherwise, like you already said earlier, if we're not having the conversations, then we're all struggling alone and we don't realize, and that just contributes to the stigma.
Yeah. I forgot. My husband he would just text me out of nowhere and he would go pulse check. And that was my like, and I'd be like, yes, I need like to come home and
Hmm.
talk about a lot of stuff. And that was his, instead of when we were both working nonstop, instead of like, hey, how's your day going?
Yeah.
Because then it didn't give me room to just say it's okay. It was
Yeah.
like a tangible word to be like, pulse check, go.
I
We
love
used to do
that.
temperature check, but I was like, I'm so bad at numbers.
I need something else.
I was
I
like,
need
I
something
don't
else.
know what's 67 again? Is that like
Mild, like, yeah. Yeah. So, kind of piggybacking off of that, if there's a parent listening who is struggling with mental illness, what words of advice or encouragement do you have for them in this moment?
it's okay to not be okay? And then the other, like the big one that we use a lot is the concept that it is a part of you, not all of you. So the
Yeah,
reminder,
I
like
love
you
that.
are struggling with mental health, you are not mental health. So I struggle with depression. I am not depression itself. And reminding yourself that you can have a cloudy day, but like that's not the whole year and that's not all of your entire being.
Yeah, I love that so much. Well, Kendall, thank you so much for coming on, having this conversation with me, sharing all your personal stories, your knowledge, your insights. As we are wrapping up, is there anything I haven't asked you about that you would like to touch on or revisit before obviously I ask you where people can connect with you, buy your book and all that stuff?
Oh no, I better quit while I'm ahead, right? Pride. So like let's go. Let's end it.
Okay, okay. So on that note, where can people connect with you and purchase your book?
So I am on Instagram and the website. I made my life easy. It's all the same word. It's Cloudy Day Chronicles. That's my Instagram. It's cloudydaychronicles.org. That's where we sell the book. We love donating back proceeds to the community. So that's why we encourage buying on the website so we can pay it forward.
I love that. And I will link those in the show notes of this episode. But once again, Kendall, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing so much of your story and your book and your family with us. And I know this episode is going to be so helpful to so many parents, whether they are struggling with their mental health currently or just need to learn ways to talk to their kids about mental health. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm like, do I send you a therapy bill? Like this was so like
No,
my
this one's
session.
on the house.
I was like, it's just such a warming, safe space to have like the heavy conversations and be giggling through it. So
Yeah,
thank you for the talk.
of course. And thank you, the listeners, for joining for today's episode of Psych Talk. And I will catch you in the next episode. Bye. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Psych Talk. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend. Don't forget to follow me on all socials at Jessica Lee, PhD, and the podcast at Psych Talk Podcast on Instagram.